Okay, here we go. Now we're recording. Sorry about that again. So again, this is UCEAP Scholarships to Support Study Abroad, and this is our year-long scholarship webinar. My name is Elizabeth Holtz. I am the Scholarship and Alumni Engagement Coordinator for UCEAP. And I've been in this role now for about a year and a half. So welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today. So we're going to start off the presentation with what UCEAP scholarships are available. And this slide is our system-wide scholarship portfolio. So first we have the UCEAP Global Scholarship, and this is the scholarship that we give, that we have the most of, that we give the most out of. So we highly encourage everyone to apply for a global scholarship, especially because if you want to be considered for some additional awards, such as our named awards, you apply for a global scholarship to be considered. And I'll talk a little bit more in depth about that later on in the presentation. We also have those named awards that I just mentioned, as well as additional scholarships that are listed here, such as the Social Media Scholarship, the Videography Scholarship, and a University of Sydney specific scholarship. Then we have year-long awards, which are our Dutton Haber Scholarship and Chris Bourne Memorial Scholarship, which again, I will talk a little bit more in depth about. And then after you return, we also have internship awards and undergraduate research awards. And this is after you return from studying abroad. So how do I apply for UCEAP scholarships? As I mentioned, the UCEAP Global Scholarship is the scholarship that we encourage everyone to apply for. That is a $2,000 scholarship for quarter, semester, or year-long programs abroad, and a $1,000 scholarship for summer programs abroad. To apply for the Global Scholarship, you access the UCEAP Scholarship Application Portal through the link on the UCEAP website. I've also included the link on this slide, and you should be able to access the hyperlink. But again, if not, you can always access it on the UCEAP website under scholarships. Under the headings for scholarships, there's a link that says Learn More, and if you click that link, it'll take you to the application site for UCEAP scholarships. The application requires that you create an account on the scholarship site and indicate your interest in UCEAP scholarships, that you fill out a form with some demographic information and complete some statement of purpose response. So as I mentioned, some other awards that we offer are called named awards, and they're called this because they are typically named after a donor who chooses to set up an award. And so here's an example of some of the named awards we offer. I'm not going to go through them all, but we have, for instance, the Jasmine Jahanshahi Scholarship, which is a $2,500 scholarship that is offered in fall and spring. We also have the Olivia Chanship Scholarship, which is also a $2,500 scholarship offered in fall and spring. And for example, that one you can see under the heading, it says student studying in Italy and meets the ideals set by Olivia. So these scholarships, if you look on the UCEAP scholarship website under the scholarship tab, there's more information specifically about what those things mean. But typically, like in that case, it's a student studying in Italy. I believe Olivia was a communication major, and so it would be a student maybe who's following in a similar kind of subject matter. We have our Guardian Scholarship for students who are a current or former foster youth. The UCEAP Memorial Scholarships, which there is an award for a student studying in Spain, Asia, Africa, and the Americas, one award for each of those areas. The Gallen Family RWC Scholarship for a student studying in Italy, focusing on language acquisition, and the Theta Shapiro Scholarship for a student participating in a language acquisition program, also offered in the fall and spring. So as you'll see here, most of these say they're offered in the fall and spring or one or more per year. And the way you don't actually submit an application for these scholarship opportunities, these are internally selected opportunities, which means that if you submit an application for the UCEAP Global Scholarship, your application will automatically be forwarded internally if you meet the award qualifications. So for example, for the Olivia Chanship Scholarship, if you're studying in Italy, your application will automatically be considered for that scholarship. So again, these scholarships you'll see on the application site, but you won't be able to apply to them because they're not applied to opportunities, they're internally selected opportunities. And if you have additional questions about that, you can always contact us. I will provide our contact information at the end of this presentation. So what other scholarships does UCEAP offer? We also have some scholarships that do require an additional application. So for example, the UCAP Social Media Scholarship is a $500 scholarship that is offered in the fall and spring, as well as the summer, but for this presentation purposes, we're just talking about fall and spring. And that is an application, or that is a scholarship that you do have to submit a separate application in addition to the global scholarship if you want to be considered for that scholarship. We also have the UCAP Videography Scholarship in memory of Albert G. Manassian. That is a $2,000 scholarship for the fall term. And then the University of Sydney Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Scholarship. This scholarship specifically is a housing waiver that is specific to students participating in the University of Sydney. We offer one of these per year. Again, if you have questions about if any eligibility requirements, you're welcome to contact us and we can elaborate further. But the main point of this slide is to mention some additional scholarship opportunities we have that do require separate applications, as opposed to the named awards I discussed in the previous slide that you will automatically be considered for if you submit a global scholarship application. So now moving on to our year-long scholarships, which I think most of the individuals probably attending today are interested in. We have the Dutton-Haver scholarships, which are $5,000 scholarships for year-long study, and the Chris Borton Memorial scholarships, which are $8,000 for year-long study. So year-long study is specifically referring to a year-long program. So although you may decide to, say, participate in a UCEAP program in the fall and you want to extend your program later, that would unfortunately not be considered for these year-long opportunities. This means that at the beginning of or at the application stage, you are applying for a year-long opportunity, a year-long study abroad UCAP program. You'll notice that the Chris Borton Memorial Scholarship is $8,000 for year-long study, but we only have 8 of those scholarships to offer. So although that is I think the highest value scholarship we offer, I highly encourage anyone to also apply, if you're studying year-long, to also apply for the Dutton-Haver Scholarship. That one is $5,000, and we have 30 or more scholarships of those to give out. So although the Borton is higher in value, the Chris Borton Memorial Scholarship is higher in value, we highly encourage students to apply to the Dutton-Haver Scholarship as well, because the Chris Borton Memorial Scholarship is also much more competitive than the Dutton-Haver Scholarship is. And both of these, I didn't mention this at the beginning of the slide, but both of these scholarships also require a separate application. And that's why some students only apply to one, but we highly encourage you to apply to both. The application requirements are an online form, a statement of purpose, a letter of recommendation that is not required, however, it is strongly recommended, a statement of academic preparation, and a statement of financial need. These applications are a little more in depth than our global scholarship application. However, we do highly encourage students to consider applying for all of them, because I will talk a little bit more about funding and combining funding later in the presentation. But like I said, so the main point I want to stress here is if you decide to apply for a year-long scholarship, do consider applying for both, and especially the Dutton-Haver Scholarship, as the Chris Borton Memorial Scholarship is much more competitive. So what eligibility requirements are necessary for UCAP scholarships? All UCAP students are eligible to apply for UCAP scholarships. So UCAP does not have citizenship, residency, or other eligibility requirements. If you are a UC student who applies and are ultimately selected for an outbound UCAP program, you are eligible to receive a UCAP scholarship. So you are eligible to apply. So definitely apply. And the reason I mention outbound specifically on this slide is because unfortunately UCEAP scholarships are not applicable to reciprocity students. So if individuals are participating in a reciprocity program, unfortunately, we cannot offer UCAP scholarships. So this is for students who are enrolled at a UC who will be participating in a UCAP program, outbound UCAP program. What are the application deadlines for UCAP scholarships? So here I have listed the application deadlines for fall/year UCAP scholarship applications. That application is currently open. It opened as of January 15th, and it is open until March 15th. All of our applications, the deadline is 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. So it's really important to consider those times, especially if you are abroad or in a different state. It's really important to consider it's 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. We unfortunately cannot make any exceptions to those deadlines. As you can see, the application is open for quite a while. So unfortunately, there are things like, system difficulties. The applications are somewhat involved. And so we highly encourage students to start their applications early and be sure to be aware of the deadlines. The spring UCEAP scholarship application term is also listed here. That opens August 15th to September 15th. And then summer, which is also currently open, that opens January 15th as well, and that will close on February 15th. And again, all of these applications are due by 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So yes, that is our application deadlines. And like I said, guys, unfortunately, we cannot provide any extensions to these deadlines. So please make sure you start your applications early. You are welcome. The system allows you to draft applications and save your applications, so you do not have to do it all in one sitting. But be sure that if you are drafting your applications, you remember to hit the submit button. It is a different button. It's an orange button that says submit, and make sure you hit submit by the appropriate deadline. So now, what requirements are there for accepting a UCEAP scholarship? So here we have our pre and post program requirements. So before your program, if you are selected for a UCEAP scholarship, before your program, you will be asked to complete a thank you letter to the donor of your scholarship due upon your acceptance of the award, and include a professional portrait photo of yourself. So if you have headshots taken, if you just have a nice photo, the only thing we ask is that it's just yourself. And the purpose of that photo is just so that the donor of the scholarship can put a face to the name of the individual who was awarded a scholarship. Then after your program, you will be asked to complete a 2-page report on your time abroad and upload a minimum of 3 photos showcasing your experience. And I didn't note this at the beginning of the presentation, but all the photos you've seen so far in this presentation are actually scholarship awardee photos that were supplied from scholarship reports. So as you can see, there's various different types of photos. This photo that is on this slide is a very lovely photo of a student who studied abroad, and I think it really captures the location of her study abroad experience. And so again, the photos are simply showcasing your experience. So there's no strict guidelines to them. We just, again, the donors want to see the impact study abroad as well as receiving scholarships for study abroad makes. So now I'm going to move on to some application tips for students who are interested in applying for UCEAP scholarships. So first off, make your personal statement responses memorable. Be specific about your background and your reasons for going abroad. So as you can imagine, every academic term, we receive hundreds of scholarship applications. And so do be specific about why you want to go abroad. We understand studying abroad is a great opportunity, that's a given, but we want to know, why do you want to study abroad? What are you looking to get out of it? And that's what really, what's the word I'm looking for? That's what really impacts reviewers when they're reading these applications is specifics of, why it's important to study abroad or what someone's hoping to achieve through study abroad. That leads me to my next point. We are looking for students who have found programs that match their academic and professional development. Tell us how your program choice fits your goals. So again, obviously you've chosen a country to study abroad in, but if applicable, tell us more about your program. Did you look to take certain classes? Are there certain instructors you want to work with? Are there certain academic or career goals you're looking to pursue that specifically that's why you chose this program? We want to know that information. The next point is to stay away from cliches about travel and other cultures. Emphasize time spent in your host country versus the chance to travel on the weekends to other countries. We understand that UCEAP, participating in a UCEAP program is a great travel experience. And yes, you likely, many students take advantage of an opportunity to travel to other countries. However, that's not necessarily what we are looking for in your scholarship application. We understand it's a great opportunity to travel. But like I said, we want to know specifically what you were looking forward to in your host country, why you chose that country, what drew you. Obviously, there are a lot of UCEAP program options. What made you choose that program option? And like I said previously, if it has to do with academic or professional development or career development, that's great. But even if it has to do with personal development, if there is some family history that maybe drew you to a certain country, some culturally relevant experience that you're hoping to participate in, mention those things in your application. Keep your application responses focused with concise and clear writing, proper grammar, and accurate spelling. Have someone review your application responses. So if you have a writing center on your UC campus, we highly encourage you to make an appointment and take advantage of that writing center for reviewing your scholarship application before submission. Not every UC campus has a writing center, and we understand that. So in that case, have someone, whether it's a family member, a close friend, have someone review your application responses. It's really helpful to have another pair of eyes on any work you do. Sometimes other people notice things that maybe you don't, or if something seems unclear to the person reading, then that gives you an opportunity to change that before you submit your final application. And lastly, create a unique response to each prompt. Scholarship reviewers will be checking student statements for the use of AI, and applications will not be awarded points for AI-generated statements. This is something that we are making very clear as we've had some instances recently of very obvious AI usage in statements. And although there are wonderful applications of AI that individuals can use, again, the goal of your scholarship application, or one of the goals we want you to achieve, is to be specific, to really show us your purpose or passion or just ideals, why your program, why that country. And AI is very general. It can be very general. And that's the thing, is that's not going to get you points or have a strong scholarship review of your application. Especially there's things, there's different language that AI uses, and sometimes it can come off very generic. Sometimes there are different formatting things of like insert here or brackets or things that just come off as very obvious that you use AI. So again, please create a unique response to each prompt, and please review your applications, because again, if we notice the use of AI, you will not be awarded points for those statements, unfortunately. Now we're moving on to some year-long specific application tips. So as I mentioned, the year-long applications they're a little bit different than the global scholarship application. And so they have some different prompts. And so these tips are related to some of that kind of information. If your GPA is below a 3.0, but you feel you are a good candidate in other ways, use the statement of academic preparation on the year-long scholarship to explain your GPA. So maybe you've recently changed majors, maybe there were some personal situations that affected your GPA, and so your GPA is not as high as you'd like it to be. Use the statement of academic preparation to explain that. You can also use that opportunity to explain, why study abroad may be helping you. Maybe you are going to take courses in your intended major or courses that you are much more passionate about or things like that. So do use that statement of academic preparation to explain your GPA if it is below a 3.0. In your financial statement, explain your current situation. If you can contribute to your own costs, so the cost of your UCEAP program by, say, working and saving money before you go abroad, be clear about this. Do include that in your statement response, because the donor of these scholarships does like to see students investing in their own future. So if that's something you are doing, be sure to mention that in your financial statement. A letter of recommendation from a supervisor or TA who knows you well is more useful than a letter from a professor who cannot speak to your personal goals and previous successes. So again, although the letter of recommendation is not required, it is strongly recommended. And we do recommend to get someone to write the letter of recommendation who knows you well, not just had you for a class period. Again, we want to know about you and the what, more about you specifically. Not, we know a lot about studying abroad. Many of the scholarship reviewers, obviously, some of them work within UCEAP, some have studied abroad themselves with UCEAP, some have studied abroad with other partners. So that's the thing is, we know a lot about studying abroad and its benefits and the education system and things like that. We want to know about you specifically. And lastly, spelling, punctuation, grammar, and good writing really matter for the Dutton-Haver Scholarship application. So they matter for all the applications, but the Dutton-Haver Scholarship application in particular, the donor of that scholarship actually has a strong background and extensive background in publishing. So those applications, it really matters that you proofread your responses, that you review, that you have someone else review, that you use the writing center. Really make sure to verify spelling, punctuation, grammar, and just to put forth your strongest writing. So now moving on to whether UCEAP scholarships can be combined. So funding from the UCEAP Global Scholarship cannot be combined with funds from our named awards, such as the Olivia Chanship Award I mentioned on that named award slides. If you are selected for our scholarships, and specifically for one of our named awards, you will receive the named award or a UCEAP Global Scholarship. The way that works, or the reason that is because our goal is to offer scholarships to as many UCEAP participants as possible. And if, say you are say you are eligible for a global scholarship because you have a high ranking application, but ultimately are chosen for a named award, we will offer you that named award instead because the named award is a higher value. So for example, the Olivia Chanship Award that I mentioned is a $2,500 scholarship, whereas a global scholarship for the fall or spring term is only $2,000. So we will always offer you the higher award if the scholarships cannot be combined, as in the case of UCEAP Global Scholarships and UCEAP Named Awards. The social media scholarship is independent and can be received in combination with any of our awards. So that is one that if you have an interest in social media, I highly encourage you to look into that scholarship because it can be combined with our other awards. Again, all of our scholarships are listed on the UCEAP website. There's little drop downs that give you more information, as well as on the application site, you can find some more information too. Students who are going abroad for the year can only receive one year-long award, as well as either a UCEAP Global Scholarship or a named award. So what that means is between the Dutton-Haver Scholarship and the Chris Borton Memorial Scholarship, you cannot receive both of them for the same year. You can receive one, as well as a global scholarship or a named award, but again, you can't receive a global scholarship and a named award together. So that might be a little confusing, and if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to our contact that, again, I'm going to share at the end of this presentation. Because we can clarify a little bit based on the specific scholarships maybe you're interested in. Also, another just good point of contact in terms of understanding combining funding, because obviously that leads to my next point, is that you can combine UCEAP scholarships with campus-based scholarships or scholarships from an external organization. The way UCEAP scholarships are packaged is a part of your financial aid package. And so anytime there's any changes to your financial aid package, it will affect what's in your financial aid package if you receive a financial aid package. So whether that's grants, loans, we at UCEAP scholarships don't have access to your financial records. So if you have questions about your financial buckets and how maybe they'll be affected, the best place to kind of ask is your campus financial aid office and representative, as they will be able to give you some more insight about how a UCEAP scholarship may affect or be combined with campus-based scholarships or independent scholarships from external organizations. Again, it is a little complicated, so feel free to contact us. However, if you have specific questions about how combining funding and UCEAP scholarships might affect your overall financial bucket, that is something that is going to be better addressed to your campus financial aid office. And lastly, you can apply for our semester-long scholarships for each semester that you are abroad if you will be on UCEAP for the year. So that is why the scholarships specifically I mentioned, if they're offered in the fall or spring, is because if you are a year-long scholarship, you can, or a year-long participant, excuse me, you can apply for a year-long scholarship, but you can also apply for our semester-long scholarships for each semester that you're going to be abroad. So specifically, for example, the global scholarship, you could apply for in fall, for the fall term, as well as for the spring term, and potentially receive a global scholarship for both. So again, I think if you have specific questions about kind of what scholarships you can apply to and when, feel free to contact us. But the system itself will also show you which, when you fill out an interest to apply for scholarships, will also help direct you to scholarship opportunities. But the important thing to know is that if you are participating on year long, you do have an opportunity to apply for more scholarship resources, which is why we do recommend, if you have the ability to study on a year-long program, we encourage you to consider it. And so finally, now we are going to talk about the post-program award options. So again, these are awards that you would apply to after you return from studying abroad. So there is the UCEAP Internship Awards that are $750 awards. And these awards recognize students who have distinguished themselves while acquiring career training and workplace skills on a study abroad program. Awards are offered semi-annually for internships in all disciplines. There's also the Undergraduate Research Awards, which are $1,000 to $1,500 awards. And those awards recognize undergraduate students who have conducted exceptional research while studying abroad. Awards are offered annually for research projects in all disciplines. There's a link on this slide that you should be able to access the hyperlink. But again, you can also access this on the UCEAP website. I believe I think it's under the Once You've Returned tab on the UCEAP website. But again, if you email us, I'm happy to direct you to that actual link if you can't access it on the PowerPoint. But these are post-program awards. So after you finish your UCEAP program, when you return, you are welcome to keep these awards in mind if you will be conducting research while abroad or an internship. These are good things to keep in mind. You could look at some of the requirements for the application and keep them in mind as you go abroad, but these applications are not completed until after you return. Okay, and so this is the last slide, and essentially is just asking you to submit any questions to the Q&A. Like I said, our contact is here at the bottom of the slide. It says contact us at scholarships@ucap.universityofcalifornia.edu. And again, if you have any questions about, year-long scholarships, the applications, eligibility requirements, those kind of things, feel free to email us, even if you have any technical issues. The one thing we do ask, especially in relation to technical issues, is, again, start an application early and reach out to us early, because if you are reaching out to us the day of the application closing, we may not be able to get to your email. Actually, let me see here. March 15th is a Saturday. So yes, March 14th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is the last time someone will be in the office, specifically before that application deadline. So again, start your application early. So if you do, excuse me, have any issues, we can try to assist you well ahead of time. And do remember, if you start your application early and you save it as a draft, to go back in and submit before or by the actual submission deadline. I highly encourage you not to wait till 11:59, because we've had some instances where students do try to submit at the last minute. And like any kind of technical system, the system can only handle so much traffic at once. So please do try to submit your application early. On that note, excuse me, I'm going to get some water real quick. On that note, a question we get sometimes is if scholarship applications are awarded first come, first serve, and the answer is no. So the application is open for fall and year-long scholarships. The application is open until March 15th, and no applications will be reviewed before the deadline. So what happens, and that's part of the reason why we don't offer exceptions or extensions to the deadline, is because once the application closes, that is when we take all the submitted applications and review them for those eligibility requirements. Our scholarships reviewers review them, and that's when we decide the awardees. But so it's not a first come, first serve system. So whether you've already submitted an application, are in progress, or plan to submit one next week, it does not matter when you submit, as long as you submit before the appropriate deadline. So yeah, with that, does anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask regarding year-long scholarships, or even just the scholarship application site, or UCEAP scholarships in general? Happy to take some time to answer those as well. Okay, I go ahead and see a hand up. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I know you gave us some tips for the application, such as like making them unique and more specific and focusing on like study abroad rather than just like traveling. And the question I have is, what's like a common mistake you often see students regarding the applications?
You mean a common mistake in how they create their responses, or what? Or are you
Creating the responses or like submitting the application, like both of them?
Yeah, I think a common it's not necessarily a mistake, but the reason why we give that application tip about being specific is because oftentimes we do receive application where students say, you know, I want to study abroad because it's a great opportunity to travel and see the world and learn more about myself. And that's all great. That's all true. But that is pretty standard for most individuals participating in study abroad. And so that's why, like I said, scholarship reviewers will read hundreds of applications every term. And if most students are saying something to that effect, none of them really stand out to a scholarship. None of those applications really stand out to a scholarship reviewer. So some of the more successful applications that we've had have said things like, oh, I purposely chose this program in this country because this professor named so-and-so offers a lab that I really want to participate in. Or I'm this major, and by taking these specific classes, I will be able to fulfill certain major requirements. Or even, like I said, it could be a personal tie. We've had individuals that add a personal tie-in. My family is originally from this country, or I grew up being surrounded by this culture, and I really would like to learn more and apply myself to that culture, or learn more about my family history, or maybe you're even sitting abroad to visit family. So like I said, those are the things. It's not necessarily a mistake, but it is a missed opportunity in terms of having a really strong UCEAP scholarship application, is because, like I said, we understand that traveling is great, and you get to learn about yourself and the world and become more independent, and all those things are true. Just like I said, they don't stand out as to why you think you should receive a scholarship to study abroad. Because the truth is, we wish we could give every student a scholarship to study abroad. Like I said, our goal is to give as many students as possible a scholarship to study abroad, but unfortunately we can't. And so we really want to know, why should we give you a scholarship? Plain and simple. So I hope that answered your question.
I have a follow-up question. I don't know if you can answer this, but do you guys have like a target audience about who you guys are giving scholarships to specifically, or like that matches the criteria? Goal by.
Go ahead.
Oh no, that was the question.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of a target audience, our goal is, so UCEAP scholarships are for all the UC campuses. So we don't offer scholarships to only one or two specific campuses. So our goal is to equitably provide scholarships to the campuses based on participation rates of the campuses. So that's one of our primary goals, is just to make sure that the students who are participating, that we're providing a equitable amount of scholarships to each campus. On top, the other factor we really consider is both academic, the word I'm looking for, both just the academic performance, those kind of things. So some of our scholarships are specifically focused on your academic history or academic goals, as well as we do consider need. It's a combination in the scholarship. So in terms of financial need or just assistance, those kind of things. And that's why I mentioned specifically about financial aid buckets, is because that is something to keep in mind if you do receive financial aid, that it will, UCEAP scholarships are packaged as part of your financial aid, so it could affect a financial aid a bucket that you already have existing. But on that note, if you don't receive any financial aid, that doesn't mean you are still eligible to apply for UCEAP scholarships. So that's something that comes up sometimes too in questions. You do not need to be receiving financial aid to receive a UCEAP scholarship. But so to your question, it's a mix of both financial need and interest in studying abroad, as well as academic background and academic merit. That's the word I was looking for earlier. A combination of academic merit and financial need that we look at, and then overall try to make sure that we have an equitable ratio of scholarships for each UC campus. In terms of our named awards, those are specifically looking at certain qualifications that I had on that slide. And again, on the website, there's a little bit more information there. But so for instance, some of the awards are specifically focusing on certain majors, on certain language acquisition programs. So that means your program is being taught, for instance, in a different language, and it's a language immersion program is what they call it. And those scholarships specifically look at whatever those kind of eligibility details are mentioned on in each scholarship listing. So yeah, if you have questions about a specific scholarship and you know, what's the best information to include or try to apply with, you're welcome to reach out to us and we can try to give you some more guidance based on that. What I will say is that if you are, like I said, because those named awards you can't apply to, we do encourage you to address the general prompts of the global scholarship, which include like, what is your academic background, those kind of things. But if, say, you're applying for the Olivia Chanship Scholarship and you're studying abroad in Italy and focused on communication, do mention that in your application, as that is something that will prompt a scholarship reviewer to pay attention to for those named awards. So I hope that answers that question too. I do see a question in the chat. So I'm just going to read that real quick. Scholarship might affect financial aid. Does that apply to yearly scholarship only or both yearly? Does award need to? Okay, so for the first part of the question, that I mentioned that scholarships might affect your financial aid bucket, excuse me, that does apply to yearly, fall, spring, summer scholarships. So if you receive financial aid, so the way UCEAP scholarships are awarded, they are packaged with your UC financial aid package. And so they will affect any existing financial aid. Some, depending on your financial aid bucket, it might not affect it in any way that, like, you may not see any differences, but it will go into your bucket. And that's what I mean by affect it, is that it has the potential to, if you receive a lot of, for instance, grants, or if you receive loans, it has the potential to affect those numbers. Our goal is always to decrease loan amounts and increase aid. But like I said, it is unique to each student's financial record, which is why your financial aid office is going to be the best contact to learn about how that may, any UCEAP scholarships may affect your financial aid bucket. And we just want to encourage everyone to be aware of that, because that is something that students sometimes get confused about. Is, you know, unfortunately, these are not just kind of like checks or you know, awards just given out straight to you. Unfortunately, just the way financial aid works, we cannot do that. So it does get packaged in your financial bucket. And so your financial aid office is going to be the best contact to let you know about how that works. But you are welcome if you want to start the conversation by reaching out to us, and we can refer you to the office or best individual to contact regarding your specific questions. The second part of this question was, is there any effect on the internship award? Does the award need to be applied? I'm not sure if you mean, does the internship award affect your financial aid bucket? I think that's maybe what the question is asking. And an internship award, I am not familiar. So like I said, because internship awards are applied after you return, that is actually handled by another kind of internship awards are handled by another department with the UCEAP team. So I would encourage you, there is a contact on that link I sent, there's a contact at the bottom of the page that you can reach out to, and that's something, or you can reach out to us and we can forward you to that contact. But I would encourage you to ask them specifically if it has any effect on your financial aid package or how it might affect your financial aid package. And a follow-up was that someone had heard that scholarship will decrease financial aid. And that is not necessarily true. It may affect your financial aid package, but you do not have to accept a UCEAP scholarship. So that is why we encourage you to be aware of what funding you're receiving, what your financial bucket looks like. Talk to your financial aid office, because in the case, say you receive all grants, and there's a max level of funding you can receive. So say you've maxed that out in terms of grants, which is wonderful. But then, yes, scholarships may replace certain amounts or may affect the amount you get from that. So that is why it's important to just know what your financial aid package looks like and talk. Like I said, if you have any questions, just talk to a financial aid officer or counselor because they'll be able to give you some more information about that. But our goal is never to decrease your financial aid. And that's why if you apply for a scholarship, are awarded a scholarship, you can always decline a scholarship. That doesn't happen often because most individuals, it does help. But if you are worried about a certain type of aid that you have, please do contact your financial aid officer. And like I said, we unfortunately, with your applications, we don't have any of that information. So we don't know what your financial record looks like. We don't know what kind of funding you get. So that's why, and we can't access that information. So that's why it's important you talk to a financial aid officer. And does the fall scholarship have a GPA requirement? So the UCEAP Global Scholarship for fall, spring, summer, we do not have GPA requirements. There are suggested GPAs for UCEAP programs to participate. And so if you have lower than that GPA, you do enter your GPA in the scholarship application. So you are we encourage you to elaborate on maybe your GPA if you feel it's not a strong GPA. So, why maybe that is, if you're working on it, what you're doing to change it, those kind of things. So I don't see any other questions in the chat, and I'm glad that my explanation was helpful and clear. Again, if it wasn't, or if you have any further questions, feel free to contact the email that is on the screen, scholarships@uceap.universityofcalifornia.edu. Let's see, I was just going to see if there are any, doesn't look like there's any questions in the Q&A. So yeah, at this point, it looks like I have answered all questions. But again, if you have any questions, there's a couple minutes left. You're welcome to ask. You are also welcome to just email us, especially if it's a little more complicated of a matter. And I'm happy to try to elaborate or direct you to a person who can help elaborate. And again, thank you all for attending today. This presentation is being recorded and it will be sent out to anyone who registered in about probably a week or two. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.